Hi, everyone. Hi, folks. Okay. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We are beyond thrilled to have J.D. Scholten running in Iowa's 4th Congressional District here with us tonight. I'm Rachel with the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. We are equally thrilled to have Progressive Champion Congressman Ro Khanna with us and Art Cullen, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer from Storm Lake, Iowa here as well. So thank you very much. Before I turn it over to our co-founder, Stephanie Taylor, Stephanie is the one that actually thought of this new program to bring the candidates to you. I'm going to show just a few quick programmatic notes. We want this call to be really interactive, so if you feel comfortable with it, please go ahead and turn your videos on now so we can engage a little bit more. When you're ready to ask JD your question, please go down to the bottom of your screen. In the middle, you'll see a chat icon. You will find Rachel, PCC host, and just send me your question. Feel free to send me your question at any point during the event. When we start the Q&A session, I will call on you, ask that you please unmute your mic, join us via video if you aren't already, and you can ask JD your question directly. We'll be recording this, so in case you're jumping in late or have to jump off in the middle, you can watch it at your convenience later, and we'll send you that as well. So please forgive me in advance if I can't get to all of your questions. I'm going to try my very best to get through as many as possible. So one final note, while these events don't cost anything, we do hope if you're excited by what you hear from JD and you think he sounds like the Midwestern progressive rising star that we believe he is, we hope you'll consider helping to support his campaign, and we'll chat you that link and make it easy. So if that's something you would consider, we would greatly appreciate that. So with that, let me go ahead and turn it over to our co-founder, Dr. Stephanie Taylor. Stephanie?
Thanks, Rachel. Hey, everybody. Welcome. We are so excited for this opportunity to talk to J.D. Scholten tonight. But first, I want to share some very exciting news. Many of you may have met Cara Eastman a few weeks ago as part of this Meet the Candidates series. She spoke to everybody. And she just won her primary yesterday in Nebraska in a landslide. And so we're very excited about that. She's onward now to the general election against Don Bacon. So thank you to everyone who made last-minute contributions to help Cara finish in a very strong position. And now back to JD, who is running one of the most important House races this cycle. For anyone who doesn't know much about JD yet, he's ran last cycle in Iowa's 4th Congressional District against Steve King, who is the current Republican incumbent and really one of the most xenophobic, racist, and anti-immigrant members of Congress there is. And it's a tough district, and JD came within 3 points of beating Steve King in 2018 without any Democratic institutional support, which is an extremely impressive showing. And Adam and I met JD when he attended one of our candidate trainings, and we were immediately impressed with his gift of communication. He's great at explaining progressive ideas in a way that anyone can follow and relate to. I think he really is this new generation of prairie populism. It's also important to note that JD is running a very populist campaign in Iowa. He's running on a platform that includes the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, support for family farmers against big ag. And his victory will show in November that economic populism can win in places like Iowa. So today, we are very lucky to be joined by Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents California's 17th district. Congressman Khanna has made his mark on Congress as a strong opponent of monopoly power and as a champion for bringing new progressives into power. Most recently, he was co-chair of Bernie Sanders' presidential race. There's a lot of synergy between him and JD, and I can't think of anyone better to introduce JD to us tonight. And so with that, thank you for joining us tonight, Congressman Khanna.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for your leadership, and to you and Adam Green and everyone at PCCC. You've been such an inspiration to us in Congress. I congratulate you on getting some of the progressive wins along with Senator Warren in the House bill. In fact, I was just texting with Adam Green what a remarkable job you and Senator Warren and others had done to have that win in the House and have some of those provisions. But I'm here today. I cannot think of a more important person to have in the Congress than J.D. Scholten. I believe it's the most important race in the country. I've believed that for a year and a half now. And let me tell you why. It actually doesn't have as much to do with Steve King. There are a lot of people who are bad people in Congress or bad people in our politics. I mean, Steve King is a particularly egregious case, but that's not what inspires me. I get drawn to people not who are running against something, but who are running for a positive vision of our nation. And J.D. Scholten gets it. He understands the economy is changing. He understands globalization, and he understands that some people in this country have been left out while others have succeeded. And his vision isn't, well, let's just go back to how things were, because he knows that's impractical. He knows that that's not going to work. His vision is, how do we give people in communities that helped build America, that helped shape our nation, how do we give them dignity and agency in the 21st century? How do we invest in them to have the jobs of the future so that their families can stay together and they don't have to leave the communities they grew up in, so that they can see downtowns that were hollowed out, revitalized? How do we give them an ability and a stake in the future to imagine the future? And how do we invest in them, in their human potential, making sure they have basic health care, making sure they have basic education, making sure that they have a shot at the American dream? And to me, what is so important is the ability of progressive ideas to succeed in this country is not just about saying, I check off a box, I'm for Medicare for all, or I'm for the Green New Deal. It's about having an ability to articulate a credible vision that at a time of incredible polarization, incredible division, can be something people see as aspirational, that they can buy into, that they can see as a vision forward for a nation where people feel lost because of economic change, because of globalization, because of technology change. And JD is offering that aspirational vision. He's offering a vision where if he succeeds in CD4 in Iowa, that's something that we can take to across this country. That's something we can do in Wisconsin and Ohio and Michigan and West Virginia and Kentucky, and say, look, we have a shot. Yes, there are always going to be subcultures of hate, but subcultures of hate don't have to become the national culture, that there is some hope for stitching this country back together with an affirmative vision that everyone can buy into, whether you're in urban America, rural America, on the coast, or in the middle of the country. And he has, I can't think of someone else more powerful as a voice to endorse him and speak for him than Art Cullen. I mean, everyone should read Art Cullen's book. If you haven't, I did. It taught me a lot more about rural communities. But one of the things I learned from Art Cullen's work is how much diversity there is in rural communities. You know, when people would talk about Iowa just being monolithic, they didn't appreciate that so many of these communities already have incredible diversity and are embracing that diversity. And we have to be careful not to be stereotyping rural communities or communities in the way that we wouldn't want people to stereotype us. So Art Cullen understands so much about the middle Americas, about rural America, about an ability to imagine the future and what needs to be done. And he and J.D. Scholten, I think, are at the forefront of imagining a new vision for America. So I am doing everything I can, literally. I mean, I have my trusted person, Cooper, have said, focus as much on J.D. as you are on me, because I'm fortunate to be in a safe seat, relatively safe seat as a Democrat. But I will do everything I can for J.D. I was planning to go out for him. Can't do that now, given coronavirus. We will go out when I can, once it's safe. But we'll do everything I can on fundraising. We'll do everything I can on mobilizing folks. It will be an enormous victory if we see J.D. Scholten. And I think the House will just be a start for him. I think he's going to be a national leader. So I'm honored to be able to introduce him. I hope all of you will do whatever you can to support him. And for me, other than having Trump defeated, this race is going to be my highest priority.
Is it my turn? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Go for it, JD.
Wow, thank you very much, Congressman. I deeply appreciate that. And just for folks who don't know, what he's doing for technology, bringing technology into rural America is so important. And it was a huge part of our message last time, and we're moving it on today in this campaign. Thank you to the PCCC. You guys were the group that allowed me to get training last time when not too many people were knocking on our doors, when nobody thought this race was winnable. And so, and thank you all for being here today. So much of this race, thinking about what we're doing here, I have to go back to the origins. And when 2016, when that election, when the national election and what happened here in Iowa, I knew I had to get more active, but I didn't know what that meant. And my grandma's my inspiration in my life. And she told me, you need to take care of the farm. And we are in the 4th district, the second most agriculture producing district in America. And what has snowballed into her telling me to take care of the farm is running for Congress. And I could easily run a Republican light, so to speak, or a just bashing King campaign, but that's not going to win this race. And that's not our vision of the future. It's about what we stand for. And if you see my shirt, it's America needs farmers, farmer needs antitrust. With COVID-19, the spotlight on 2 major issues that I was talking to before is happening right now. That's our healthcare system, and that's our food system. And so I would be more than happy to answer a lot of those questions. And lastly, this district, the downside of this district is that there's 60,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats, but we were able to get 25,000 more votes than there are Democrats in this district. And the whole reason that we were able to do that is I have this philosophy of getting out to the people, proving they're trustworthy, prove that you're going to fight for your constituents, you're going to earn votes regardless of their voter history. And that's how my political heroes, 2 of the 3 political heroes are from this district. I have Berkeley Bedell, who used to represent this district, and this is his former plate right here that he would give out to important people in the district. And then the other person is Senator Harkin, and before he was a senator, he was a congressman in this district. And the third person who I would consider a political hero is Paul Wellstone. And so that's kind of, I'm more than happy to answer a lot more questions, but with that, and we are, I'll just quickly say too, that where we're at as a campaign, not having a primary, probably the only race in America where the incumbent has a primary and the challenger doesn't, we are geared up and ready to go. And we will have the primaries in about a month, June 2nd, and we're hoping to have close to $1 million cash on hand advantage over King or whoever the nominee is, but we assume it's going to be King. So we can dictate the messaging from day one and make this reality of this vision I had when we launched this campaign in 2017, very humbly, everything is starting to become fruition. So with that, I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Thank you so much. JD, thank you. We are about to dig into questions. We know you all are eager, but before that, I want to turn it over to the wonderful Art Cullen, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer from Storm Lake, Iowa. Thank you so much, Art, and please take it away.
Well, thank you, Rachel and JD and Ro, for your kind words. I have not and normally don't do this sort of thing. I'm kind of stepping outside the bounds of what I consider to be normal practice in journalism. But I feel so strongly about Ro Khanna and J.D. Scholten may not speak ill of King, but I will. And I feel so strongly about Steve King. I've been battling him for 20 years. And we're sick of him here. We're sick of him. We're sick of his racism. And we're sick of his idiocy. And we're sick of him being tied at the cranium to Donald Trump. And it's time for him to go. And we have J.D. Scholten, who is a real progressive populist in the tradition of Berkeley Bedell. For the first time, we've run some weak candidates. The strongest one was Christy Vilsack, wife of former Governor Tom Vilsack. And she was the closest that anybody ever got to Steve King until JD came along, and he got within 3 points of him. And I'd remind people who are tuned in here that in 1974, it was the post-Watergate wave, and Berkeley Bedell and Tom Harkin, these two populists from Western Iowa, came out of the woodwork and were part of the takeover of Congress. But it took them 2 tries. Berkeley ran the first time against Wiley Main, who was the chief defender of Richard Nixon in Watergate. And Harkin ran against an incumbent by the name of Bill Shirley. And Berkeley won on the second try by tying Wiley Main to Richard Nixon. He was his last and strongest defender against impeachment. And the same is true today. This is JD's second try. He got very close the first time, based on he's a friendly guy. People like him. Everybody likes a baseball player, and a paralegal, of course. And people liked him. And the same thing can happen this time. JD can win this race. And that's the only reason I'm talking today, is because we've put up with it too long, and we got to get rid of this guy. He's an embarrassment to the state of Iowa. He's an embarrassment to the United States. Even the Republicans think he's too racist and booted him off all the committees. Now he claims he's going to get back on, and the Republicans are denying that he'll get back on any committees. Let's just answer the question once and for all and elect JD, and then we know that Steve King won't be on any committees. And so I'll leave it at that. That's why we endorsed JD the day he announced he was running the first time. And when he lost in our next edition, we endorsed him again to run again. And we're glad that he's running, and we're glad that we're going to take down Steve King and Donald Trump before they take down this republic. So with that, I'll shut up. And I probably won't ever do this thing again, but it's so important to get JD elected. It's the only reason I'm stepping outside what I consider to be the good bounds of journalism and doing this. So thank you for putting up with me.
Thank you so much, Art. We are very lucky to have you here with us tonight. So folks, let's dig into questions. I have a bunch of them come in, so let's go. Our friend Morris Pearl. Morris, sir, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Oh, go ahead, Morris.
Thanks. Great to see you, JD, and honored to support you. I was wondering what you think. You mentioned technology, and if you think that Western Iowa, where you're running, is partially challenged because of the lack of broadband service and the lack of really high-speed internet that we enjoy here in New York and California. So I was just wondering what you think about that, and if that is an issue in your campaign, and will it be an issue when you're in Congress?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and one of the difficulty parts of this, and it's good to see you, Morris. One of the difficulty parts of this is that the maps on where broadband works and where it doesn't work are inaccurate, and there's no really set boundaries. And so even here in Sioux City, which is the largest city in the district, we don't have fiber. And so I have a friend who helps us out on the campaign who does gigs all over the nation for photography, videography. But when he comes back here, he can't download at the rate people can in Omaha or Des Moines or in major metropolitan areas. And so that puts him as a disadvantage. And so to me, the importance of what we're seeing with COVID-19, telehealth. We're the second most agriculture producing district in America. We're extremely rural. We're 39 counties. 5-hour drive east-west, 3-hour north-south. And that means that what we're seeing is concentration in so many different aspects of our life. And so telehealth is going to be more and more important, and just allowing for economic opportunity is so much more important. And so it's at the forefront. Technology and bringing more technology into this district is at the forefront. And the last thing I will say is that Iowa, the next part of the major economy in Iowa is going to be agriculture technology. And we need to have the infrastructure in place in order for it to take off.
Thank you, JD. Perfect. Up next, our friend Marjorie Roswell. Margie, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Please ask JD your question.
Oh, hi. I think I might have two questions. Your t-shirt reads Antitrust, and I wonder if you think that the country understands that, and what the chances are of getting there. And my second question is, what food system work would you like to focus on?
Yeah, well, thank you, Marjorie. This is what I'm extremely passionate about, and I could talk for a half hour, but I'm going to try and be brief with this. I feel that the first thing we need to do is enforce our antitrust laws, because right now, farmers, workers, and consumers are at a disadvantage, because you look at the beef packing industry, 4 companies control 85% of the market. In pork, it's 3 companies own 60% of the market. And any time that you're above 50% with 3 or 4 companies or fewer, that's considered a monopoly. We are more concentrated now than when Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle. And one of my biggest honors, I think, as a candidate, Mother Jones wrote an article about us. They came last fall. I can't remember when it was released. I think it was earlier this year. But they referred to me as the only candidate talking about the Packers and Stockyards Act of 1921. And that allows for a level playing field. And so when farmers are allowed to stay on their land and make a dime, that will benefit rural communities immensely. And what we're seeing in our food system, and the spotlight in our food system, is that for decades it's been get big or get off the farm. It's been an emphasis on efficiency, and more so than resiliency. So last year there was a fire in a slaughterhouse down in Kansas, and it affected the whole market. And so what we're seeing in beef, only 50 plants can produce 98% of our meat. And so if there's not much room for flexibility, and that's what we're seeing in COVID-19. And so what I want is, for pennies on the dollar, let's invest in a local and regional food system. And what that looks like is we need to create the markets, and most of agriculture is policy driven. So if we create the farm to school, farm to nursing home, farm to hospital, farm to community college, farm to military, if we create that infrastructure in that market and then let it grow on that, that's going to help climate change. That's going to help our environment. That's going to be huge, instrumental into helping these small towns revitalize. And that's a huge part of what I'm going out there. And I will say that in the last 2 weeks with COVID and the spotlight on this, I've had at least a half dozen Republicans come up to me and say, I'm a lifelong Republican, but you're exactly right, and thank you for saying what you're saying. And it stems from antitrust. So,
thank you, JD. Okay, up next we have Miss Judy Plank. Judy, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Judy, please go ahead and ask JD your question.
Hi, JD. It's been a while. I got distracted by the caucuses and the primary for the Senate person, but now I'm back. So, you had your Sioux City Sioux out and about last time around, but now we're sitting at home. So, how do you plan to reach the people this time to get over the finish line?
Yep. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so one of the things that we're doing right now, and what we've been able to do, is create the campaign infrastructure to what we like to call digital door knocking. And one of the things, having the caucus here, Senator Warren, after her presidential campaign was done, they open sourced a lot of their technology. Well, we're fortunate enough to have a lot of volunteers who are in technology, and they've worked the source codes to help in a congressional race and do things to our needs. And so we're creating a system, what we call digital door knocking, and we're preparing for just in case we can't do actual door knocking. And so we have over 100 active volunteers right now, and after the Senate primary is done, we expect more people to shift focus on this. And I mean, as I go around the districts, and last cycle was the case too, even though we had a gubernatorial race, we are kind of considered the top of the ticket around these parts. And so we're going to set the tone and help down ballot races. We're going to pull voters out, whether it's here in Sioux City that has low voter turnout, whether it's the Latinx community that is huge in Sioux City, Storm Lake, Denison, Franklin County, all throughout the whole district. They've never been organized before. And so that's a huge part of it too. And so the RV is supposed to get done. I didn't get a phone call today, so probably tomorrow. And so we will get back out there. It may not be where we can have handshakes and kissing babies and all that stuff, but we will get out there and have some sort of presence, because that RV is too visually powerful, I would like to say, that and have our presence, that we're still going to get out there on some form, but we'll do it in a safe way.
Perfect, thank you. Up next, we have Mr. Robert Fram. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. Robert, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, sir. Please ask JD your question.
Yeah, it's pronounced frame, like a picture frame.
Got it.
I wrote the question originally, and then you keep asking me to repeat it, and of course I didn't write it down. The question was something about, it's a big lift. I mean, the congressman talked about changing the narrative, which is an overarching thing to do to allow for more opportunities for progressive legislation. But hopefully you'll be on the inside, and I wonder if you already have some ideas of how you would move progressive legislation forward against Republican and corporate Democrat opposition inside the structure that Congress requires. Like, so do you have ideas of how to kind of move legislation forward by playing the congressional game? And I don't mean that negatively. I mean, it's got its own mores. Thanks.
Right. That's a great question. And I think one of the things that I've been able to I wouldn't say that I'm the only one who's influenced, but a lot of things that I stand for, and I mean, it comes back to the antitrust stuff. 2 years ago, nobody was talking about this. We had a caucus, and I worked on 5 or 6 of the presidential campaigns on the rural policies. And every single candidate that ran on the Democratic ticket had antitrust in their platform. And it's one of those things where we just need to continue to fight and show that, hey, this is what people want. This is what people need. And I think that's one of the biggest things. When I talk about antitrust, I think this is a progressive idea, but at the same time, Senator Grassley has talked about this for years. He hasn't done a darn thing about it, but there's some commonality there. And honestly, I'm an outsider. I've never been elected, so yeah, I would have to learn a lot of the inner workings of DC and how that works as well. But I think it's important. When I think my strengths and what I'm trying to do is be a bridge to folks here in the Midwest to some of the progressive movement that's not necessarily here, because the roots of the progressive movement used to be the prairie populism that came from here, and then it would work out ways, and now it's kind of reversed. And so I'm trying to be that bridge, and so I'm work the best of our ability to get stuff done.
Great. Up next, folks, bear with me. Thank you so much for all your questions. I'm working to get through them. Georgianne D'Angelo is up next. Georgianne, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Oh.
Hey, JD. I've been making phone calls for you with Cody, and I have to say, I love your people. I live in New Jersey, but I'm a native Iowan, and I am just thrilled to death about your possibilities here. My question, though, was about King. You just referred to the fact that you thought you could, beat King. You really think King's going to be the
nominee
Republican candidate? It looks to me like Feenstra might be.
No, and here's the reason why. There's 7 different media markets. This district's so big and rural, and it's hard to get your message out there. And King has his base. There's no doubt about it. And there's 4 people actually running against him, not just one. And there's definitely an anti-King sentiment. I feel that they're gonna split that vote, and King will be the nominee. If you look at the last couple cycles, he's had a primary each time and has done nothing, and he can get 30,000 votes like that. And so he's actually trying for the first time in a while. And so if I had to make a prediction, which I'm not a gambling man or anything like that, but I would expect King to win, but get less than 50%.
Thank you. Up next, Heidi Fisk. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Heidi, what's your question?
My question is about voting by mail and the post office. I'm kind of a nut on this. The future of the post office is in doubt. How important is voting by mail in Iowa, and what should we do about it, and can you do about it? The post office, I mean.
The post office is extremely important to rural America. It is a lifeline. And I've been very active. In fact, we did one of these and put it on our social media platforms with the head of the union of the woman who runs the post office here in the state of Iowa. And it's so critical. And I just remember visiting my grandparents on the farm and how important getting the mail was in each person's day. That everything's, there's lunch, there's dinner, and there's getting the mail. and so we don't have vote by mail here, but what in the primary, the Secretary of State has agreed, and I'll give him credit for this, that he sent the absentee ballot request form out so people can request it. And this is another reason why I think it's going to be King, because they're going to have a lot more people than that traditionally vote. And they've been voting for him. They recognize his name, and they may not be all as in tune as more of the activists, I would say. So we're trying to push for vote by mail in the general. The Secretary of State has not agreed to that yet. He hasn't even agreed to the absentee ballot request forms yet. And so, in fact, the latest I heard was that he has said that he's leaving it up to the political parties to do that. And so I think they're waiting for the primary to happen and see the success of it, and then make a decision for the general right after that.
Can I ask a follow-on question, or am I muted?
Nope, go ahead.
Every time I ask a question about the post office, I get an answer about vote by mail. I'm concerned about the future of the post office,
right?
And what's happening with it now, which is really dire.
Right.
So what can we do, or can you do, or can anybody do to make sure we have a functioning post office, robustly functioning and not politically run? That's to me basic to being able to vote by mail.
Exactly. And I think the most important part of that is we can't have the law right now that says they have to have their retirement paid 75 years in advance. Think about that. They're paying for someone's retirement who's not even born yet. And that is, we have to reverse that and allow the post office, because they, as a functioning system, they don't take any taxpayer dime. They're funded by their services. And I think there's more services we can even work with them on, and especially in rural communities. And so I'm a huge advocate for the post office. It's in the Constitution. I think we need to push to make sure that it's more connected. And these, again, it's a lifeline to these rural communities. So the first thing I would do is try and change it so they don't have that burden to fund their retirement for 75 years in advance.
Great. Lisa North. Lisa North, you're up next, please. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Lisa North, what's your question? Lisa? Okay, JD, I will ask one of Lisa's questions. How can the government help people who have lost their jobs and are now not able to pay for food or rent?
Right. I mean, this is so much of what we're seeing, and a lot of the CARES Act we saw benefit corporations, and it's not helping out the people as much as we would like. And we saw I saw the tweet today that it was announced that if for people who made $40,000 or less as of February, 40% of those people lost their jobs in March. And we got to get money into people's hands. And so, like Congressman Khanna, big difference. He, I know, has a bill that talks about giving people $2,000 a month. And I mean, I would support that. That we're seeing what other nations are doing, and they're doing that. And so, $1,200 actually goes a long ways here in Iowa. Maybe not for everyone, but for some folks. But it doesn't go a lot in a lot of places, and I know it doesn't cover rent in a lot of places. And so, what we're seeing too, the other part of it is in this state. I think a lot of attention has been drawn to the meat packing plant workers, and we're asking these folks to, or their employers are asking them to work in these very difficult situations in normal time. Now in the time of COVID, the president signed the executive order of forcing these things to be open and these people to work. And if they quit, it's considered a voluntary unemployment. And so they don't get to receive unemployment. Now there's going to be a lawsuit about that, but that's what our governor here in Iowa has talked about. And that is so inhumane and just not the direction we need to be going as a nation.
Thank you, JD. Okay, folks, I think we have time for one more question. We have Daniel Siegel. JD has a question on foreign policy. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, sir. Or Daniel, go ahead, please.
Yeah, JD, I'm excited to listen to you and to be following your campaign. I love your progressive domestic policies. I'd love to hear you talk about foreign policy, because I do think that domestic progressive policies need to be matched with social justice foreign policies. Particularly, what would you do to support freedom and equality for our Palestinian sisters and brothers? And have you endorsed Betty McCollum's urgent human rights bill, HR 2407, which would finally end US funding for placing Palestinian children into military detention?
This is the first time I've heard of the bill, so I would like to read more about it, and thank you for the question, Daniel.
I'd be happy if there's a way to make sure you get fact sheet and a copy of the bill.
Yeah, email us, or our emails on our website. I'll make sure I do that. I think one of the champions of international progressivism, I would say, for foreign relations, according to the U.S., has been Congressman Ro Khanna. And so I am very close with him and follow a lot of his lead on this. I know what's happening, the threat of what's happening on July 1st in Israel. We need a two-state solution. There's no doubt about that. And that's our pathway to peace. And what's happening, I apologize, what's happening on July 1st with the annexation and everything that is going in the wrong direction. So I will say the majority of international relations talk here deals with trade and agriculture. So that's where I'm more, the focus of our campaign is more so on, but at the same time, international relations as it relates to human rights is absolutely what we need to, as a nation, to be leaders on and be that city on the shiny city on the hill that both sides think we are.
Perfect, thank you. So actually there's one more question I wanted to sneak in there.
Yep.
We have Anderson Clayton. She asked, how do you talk to people who write off rural America as Trump country?
Hi, Anderson. She was an organizer during the caucus, and we have a very similar passion on rural communities and not writing it off. You know, if we don't, we as in Democrats, we as progressives don't go into these rural communities, they're going to stay the way they are. We have a county here that is, for as long as I've been alive, since 1980, on the presidential level has never voted above 20% for a Democrat in their county, other than Michael Dukakis in '88. And so we got 25%. And I wouldn't get that unless you go there and you go and talk to people. And you know, I come at this in a mindset that I'm a competitor. I love baseball. That's my background. But I want that challenge. I want to go and earn votes. I'm not just here. And when I win, I'm not just going to be representing one person or one ideology. I'll be service. It's a service, and it will be servicing the whole district. And so what we do is we go everywhere, we talk to everybody. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, or brown, doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Independent, Republican. We're gonna go out there and earn your votes. And that's how we got 25,000 more votes than there are Democrats. And if folks would, excuse me, pay attention, there is this huge opportunity to earn votes in rural America right now. Antitrust is one of the easiest things that we can go and talk to anybody about. The amount of Republicans who have seen, or Republican farmers who have seen what's happened and how concentrated we are and how that hurts them. And again, if you look at Senator Grassley's tweets, you'd think he's a progressive because he talks about antitrust and putting a limitation on the farm bill and different things like that. And so we got to meet voters where they're at. And I think we should not write off anywhere. And so I know we like to play the political game on should we go to Georgia or should we go to Iowa or Arizona or different places like that. And I'm under the belief of yes, and we should go there and we can come to rural parts. And if we are going to get serious about winning back the Senate, we have to do a lot better in rural America. And so that's one of my big passions, is competing everywhere. And if we're going to compete and move these agendas like we want to, we have to do better in the Senate. We have to do better in rural America.
Thank you, JD. Okay, folks, thank you so much for those thoughtful questions and the thoughtful responses, JD. Please forgive me if I didn't get to your question. I tried my best. We are going to put my email in the chat, so please reach out to me if I didn't get to your question, and I will connect you to the best person from JD's team, and we will get your question answered. So we're going to move toward wrapping this up, and I'm going to kick it back to our co-founder, Stephanie Taylor, to share some of her final thoughts.
Thanks, Rachel. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to JD for spending the time with us, to Art Cullen, to Congressman Ro Khanna, and to everyone on this call who's interested in this race. There are few races in America right now where they're between the way backwards and the way forwards, and it's such a clear and stark choice. And we have a chance right now to get someone out of Congress whose positions are couched in fear and hatred, and replace him with someone who advocates for a populism that's this expansive vision of what this country can and should be for every American and every person who wants to be American. And so if you can, please do consider contributing. Every dollar counts, especially as JD talked about in this moment of pandemic when campaigns are really having to be creative with their resources to get their messages out. And thank you again so much for your time tonight. Thanks, JD.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. JD, did you have a few final thoughts that you wanted to leave folks with?
I just want to say that so much of our campaign is, I mean, we started so humbly last time. I don't think folks understand. We started from nothing, and it's grassroots. And so $5 got us so far and get us to the next and everything. And we find unique ways of doing this. We're not that typical campaign that just stayed in our office or in our home and just dialed for dollars. We got out there. And so we're going to need a few bucks to get on put the RV and go get some gas. We need a few bucks to do digital door knocking. And so the traditional campaign of just staying home all day and fundraising and really not being in tune with the district and just trying to win the TV ads, that's not us. We are organic and creative, and if for folks who don't know our organizer, even though a couple people in here might know Cody, he's amazing. We're trying to do something different in the sense of allowing folks to empower themselves to do different things when it comes to organizing this district. And so I'm so proud of my campaign and my staff and what we represent and what our vision is as well. And so with that, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to the PCCC for setting this up, and thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, JD. Folks, this was a lot of fun. Thank you to JD and Rep Khanna and Art Cullen, our co-founder Steffi Taylor, but most importantly, thank you all for engaging and being here with us now. So if you can chip in something, whatever you're comfortable with, please consider that. We're grateful for that. The link is in the chat box. Again, reach out to me. My email's in there. We will get your question answered. If I couldn't get to it, please keep an eye out for an invite for our next call with Meet the Candidates. Stay safe, stay positive, stay well, and thank you so much. Bye.